Our video today revisits education in Chase County, Kansas, from the era of one-room schools to the unified county system of today. We have relied extensively on the unique collection of school records and memorabilia found in the Chase County Historical Museum and Library. I know that Don Sisson, the museum curator, would be delighted to show you the museum's collection.
Welcome to the Chase County Historical Society and Museum. We are currently in our schoolroom display. This room offers many memorabilia from all of the schools. There was 66 one-room schoolhouses at one time. There were 7 high schools. We offer many yearbooks from those high schools. We invite you to come in and see what else we have to offer in this room and the other displays. We also do research, so please come in and see us.
From pioneer times to the present, schooling has been a high priority for Chase County residents. The first schools in Chase County were subscription schools. In these, the students paid the teacher. 4 pay schools around Bazaar, Toledo, and Cottonwood Falls. It's believed that the first free school in Kansas Territory opened around Council Grove about 1851. There, Thomas Huffaker, a teacher brought to instruct Kaw Indians, also started a school for the children of traders and settlers. Before Kansas joined the Union in 1861, its territorial legislature took steps to make free schools convenient to most students. In 1858, it established a territorial superintendent to oversee education. The legislature directed counties to elect superintendents for the purpose of certifying teachers and organizing school districts. In December 1859, more than a year before Kansas achieved statehood, Chase County elected its first school superintendent. He was Sam Wood, the colorful and controversial publisher, lawyer, and speculator. Wood had named the county for his friend, the Ohio governor and senator, Salmon P. Chase. Sam Wood moved quickly to form the first school districts. But little was done in education until January 1861, when Kansas became a state and a new state constitution took effect. It also provided for election of county and state superintendents to supervise education. Proceeds from the sale of federal lands would be used to support these schools. In Chase County, the first common school districts were formed in December 1861, somewhat differently than Sam Wood had proposed. They were in numerical order: Elmdale, Clements, Cedar Point, Heimer, Union, Cottonwood Falls, Bazaar, and Crocker. 4 more were added in 1862 and others in later years, making 66 districts. The county's population rose after the Civil War as settlers poured in, attracted by cheap land, good farming, and ranching opportunities. Arrival of the railroad in 1871 and development of the county's limestone quarries provided many good jobs. By 1870, Chase County had a population of nearly 2,000. It quadrupled to 8,246 in 1900. Many of the arrivals had large families. It was not uncommon for there to be 8 or 10 children. The number of pupils enrolled in schools rose over 700% to 2,464 in 1900. The earliest common schools in Chase County were one-room log cabins with dirt floors. They were soon replaced by frame and limestone buildings. Typically about 20 feet by 30 feet, these rural schools were heated by an iron stove using wood or coal. Often there was a bell tower, sometimes 14 feet high, that summoned the pupils to class. The length of the school year varied widely. Some poor districts could only afford schools of 3 or 4 months. The basic curriculum involved reading, writing, and arithmetic, with some geography tossed in. School books included the McGuffey's Reader, the most widely used text in 19th century America. There were no grades. Students came and studied with a teacher until they were prepared to take a county examination. Absenteeism was high, as farm work often took priority. Those who passed the county exam graduated from grammar school. Most married and remained on farms with only this basic education. We're here in the historic Chase County Elementary School with Tom Thompson, a member of the board of the Chase County Historical Society. Tom, along with several others, have investigated the sites of some 60 one-room schools in Chase County. Tom, can you tell us a little about what you learned from your work?
I learned that we had a lot of one-room schoolhouses. Most of the schoolhouses moved around over the years. The period we investigated, Steve and I and Roland, was from the 1901 plat map of Chase County. And we used that plat map to go out and find old foundations of that particular time. It got a little confusing sometimes because the locals say, oh no, the school wasn't there, it was over here, or it was over there. And we found that a lot of the wooden ones, for sure, they just pick them up, put an axle under it, and move it 2 or 3 miles if there's a new family moved in. So it got kind of confusing trying to find where they actually were.
Teachers were often young ladies, sometimes recent graduates of the one-room schools themselves. Strict rules governed their conduct. They were not to keep company with men nor marry during their school contract. They were not to loiter in ice cream stores nor wear bright-colored dresses more than 2 inches above the ankle. Until the late 1870s, the county superintendent examined and selected teachers. To improve the quality of instruction, the state established the normal school at Emporia in 1863 and authorized county superintendents to hold annual normal institutes to train teachers. The first normal institute in Chase County took place for 4 weeks in August of 1877. The institute held morning and afternoon classes in an unair-conditioned building. More than 50 teachers attended, even though teachers were poorly paid in that era. Rural teacher pay averaged about $30 per month. Chase County produced some talented women teachers and educators. One of the most distinguished was Annie E. Arnold, one of the first teachers at Chase County High School in Cottonwood Falls when it opened in 1905. She authored 2 textbooks widely used in Kansas public schools. One, A History of Kansas, and the other on civics and citizenship. Arnold became Chase County Superintendent in 1907, and in 1914 she ran statewide for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Although she didn't win, Arnold carried her home county handily, and she led the statewide Democratic ticket, polling more votes than the Democrat candidates for governor and U.S. senator. Others prominent among the early teachers who acquired a professional education were Cleopatra Ice, Jessie Shaft, and Minnie Norton. Each had attended the normal school at Emporia, now Emporia State University. Another much revered lady educator in the early 20th century was Ida Mae Way Vincent, who graduated from the one-room school at Union, taught at Matfield Green, and became Chase County Superintendent for 31 years from 1937 to 1968. She would preside over the difficult downsizing and unification of Chase County schools after World War II. The county mourned her when she passed away in 1996 at the age of 103. Few of the classic country schools remain in the Flint Hills today. One familiar to visitors is the Lower Fox Creek School on the Tallgrass National Preserve. Constructed in 1882 by local stonemason David Redeker of native limestone, this District 14 school operated until 1930. We're here in the Lower Fox Creek School on the Tallgrass National Preserve with Steve Dawson of the Chase County Historical Society. Steve is one who has examined the one-room schools in Chase County. Steve, how does this one compare to the others?
This is probably one of the better ones of the stone. There is a wood one out at Homestead that is very well preserved and kept.
The one-room schools were about the same size, weren't they?
Yes, all the one-room schools were built on a 1-acre site. It was a small area set aside, either built out of local stone or by lumber that was donated and brought in.
Some of the ones that were erected of wood blown down by cyclones and tornadoes or burned in fires, but the ones that were made of stone tended to survive, didn't they?
Yes, all of the stone ones that were still standing, that weren't torn down to build new schools, are still standing.
The white frame school at Homestead on County Road H, which was built in 1912 and functioned as a school until 1952, currently serves as a community center. Those traveling along K-177, the Flint Hills National Scenic Byway, can view a 2-room school in Bazaar with a bell tower constructed in 1917. It also serves as a community center. And in Cottonwood Falls, visitors can see the historic elementary school built in 1904 of native limestone. For over 100 years, it served generations of students until falling enrollments prompted the school board to close it in 2010. Rural one-teacher schools, located every few miles across the prairie, served adequately frontier children who only needed a basic education. The schools also doubled as social centers for the community, polling places, and churches on Sundays. But there were problems. The quality of instruction was uneven, local funding often inadequate, sometimes unsanitary conditions endangered the health of pupils. State Superintendent Peter McVicker complained in 1868 about the poor ventilation in primary schools. He reported that many of the one-room schools have no outhouses at all. The state would subsequently establish standards for school construction and maintenance. There were other dangers. Cyclones, lightning, fires, and flooding might disrupt rural education. Tornadoes damaged the ice school near Clements and twice flattened the Fairview or Schwilling School in 1892 and 1912. Lightning hit the Silver Creek School near Clements in 1905 and knocked senseless a 10-year-old girl who happened to be drinking water. A number of the early schools burned down, among them Cedar Point, Eleanor, Homestead, Rock Creek, Sharps Creek, Thurman, and Toledo. In 1908, a teacher and 2 students drowned as their horse-drawn buggy toppled crossing a rain-swollen stream near Matfield Green. For a time, in the late 19th century, there were two parochial schools in Chase County, a Catholic school affiliated with St. Anthony's Church and a German Lutheran school, both in Strong City. Before the landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1954 on school desegregation, some areas of Kansas maintained racially segregated schools. Not so in Chase County. Records in the Historical Museum show that Chase County had integrated schools in the 19th century. By the 1930s, there were also Latinos in Chase County schools, the sons and daughters of Mexican farm and railroad workers.
Strong City was kind of unique because they didn't try to keep the blacks and the whites separate in schools. They were always in the schools, and Cottonwoods had, African Americans here too. You just went up to Council Grove in the late 1800s, there was a lot of controversy over blacks in the school. But here it seemed to be pretty well accepted. Of course, the quarry industry employed almost a third of African Americans. So there's a large population here that worked in the quarries.
And there was a Latino population as well.
Yes.
That came in perhaps with the railroad.
Santa Fe, yes.
Right.
It was awful strange, and I went to schools in the 50s and 60s, and we never viewed as anybody as being colored. They were just school kids. So that has been more prevalent in later years. Everybody was pretty well treated the same.
Yeah. And a number of Latinos came into reps, parents working on the railroad or doing working on farms.
Oh my, yes. They used to call them railroad camps. We have records of them being scattered all along the railroad from Strong City up by Clements over into Marion County, where they would build these little, you might call them towns. They didn't have a name, but that would be where the Hispanics came and stayed.
In the early 20th century, changing conditions prompted Kansas educators to promote consolidation of the one-room schools. They concluded that rural students were at a disadvantage to those attending grade schools in towns or cities. Also, the burden of maintaining schools fell heaviest on rural school districts with low property valuations. With better roads and autobuses, educators argued it was feasible to transport students. Consolidation, they said, would cut costs and improve the quality of primary schooling. Professors at the Emporia Normal School predicted in the 1920s that as a result of consolidation, Elmdale could become the second wealthiest school district in Kansas. Some disagreed with the view in Topeka that one-room schools shortchanged students.
My Aunt Millie used to say all the smartest kids in high school came from the one-room schoolhouses. I'm not sure if it was true, but it definitely showed her preference for one-room schoolhouses. They felt that the kids helped teach each other. There's in a classroom, you had the 8th grade kids could help the younger kids.
Nonetheless, demographic changes gradually forced school consolidation in most rural areas of Kansas. The number of pupils enrolled in schools fell steadily. In Chase County, the population dropped 63% from 8,246 in 1900 to 3,030 in 2000. School enrollment plunged from 2,464 in 1900 to 473 in the year 2000, a decline of 81%. What happened? The Depression of the 1930s and World War II hastened the shift of population to urban areas with industrial jobs. Mechanization reduced the need for labor on farms and ranches. Better roads, motor vehicles, and communications enhanced the mobility of individuals, and couples chose to have fewer children. The population decline in Chase County mirrored similar contractions in other rural Flint Hills counties.
In the 30s, of course, the automobile was being used. They were able to make school buses. Also had to do with the 30s, was the dirty 30s is what we call them. So a lot of the local farmers had left for better ground, consolidated in. More farms were being bought up by local landowners, and so there wasn't as many families.
In response to these changes, the Kansas legislature mandated school district reorganization after World War II, as a series of state superintendents had urged. The view in Topeka was that one teacher's school districts were small in area, unstable, and financially insecure. It became clear to county officials that consolidation was inevitable. Under the direction of Ida Vinson, Chase County took the lead among Flint Hills counties in closing one-room schools. From 1945 to 1947, it reduced the number of school districts 63%, from 43 to 16, far more than nearby counties. Chase County then auctioned off schoolhouses and land. The Lower Fox Creek School, for example, sold for $220. Stoves sold for 25 cents, and pianos for 50 cents to bidders. By 1955, there were only 3 one-teacher districts left. These last rural schools, Elk Union, Heimer, and Pleasant Valley, closed by May 1960. Their students joined larger grade schools in other county towns. Consolidation brought many changes. It meant that students must travel greater distances. By the late 1920s, several districts in Chase County had purchased school buses. The first buses were open-air vehicles with no heat or air conditioning. Because of the distances involved and the numbers being bused, Chase County's cost of transporting students was for a time one of the highest in Kansas. Students on school buses had many misadventures. During one period of sub-zero weather, the Heimer bus broke down with snow in the carburetor. Several of the students froze their faces and hands before making it home.
You had to ride the bus into Cottonwood, didn't you?
Over 45 minutes. It was sometimes an hour to ride from Cedar Point to Cottonwood on the bus.
Was the bus air conditioned in those days?
Windows down and blowing as air conditioning.
Yeah, I remember those.
And a lot of dust when you got on gravel roads.
School consolidation was controversial. Small towns sought to safeguard their schools from neighboring communities. Consolidation was very controversial for the people who lived in rural areas, wasn't it?
Oh my, yes. This Saffordville-Toledo area is a prime example. They wanted to consolidate those schools in, and after many votes, meetings, heated meetings, it was agreed to that they would consolidate the school into Saffordville, but it had to be called the Toledo School District School. So the names were the biggest part.
Some towns like Strong City were particularly reluctant to give up their buildings, I think.
It was a big rivalry. I finished high school at Cottonwood, and even though we were only 2 miles apart, there was a big rivalry. A lot of fights, and they did not want to give up their high school. They did not want to give up their grade schools.
They also feared the loss of business and their local identities.
You watched the consolidation movement from your vantage point, I guess, in Strong City over the years. Why was there considerable opposition to school consolidation?
Well, from my perspective, growing up in Cedar Point, my dad and all his sisters are one-room school teachers. He had 3 sisters that taught in one-room schools. And their opinion was there was 2 ways to destroy a community: close down their school and close down their grocery store. And you can almost see the decline of every town after the school closed. No one's going to move into that town with young children if they have to bus their kids somewhere else. They're going to move close to where the school system is. I mean, it occurs in urban areas even now. People want to be close to where their kids are going to school.
Before World War I, most rural education had ended with elementary school. In 1914, there were only 168 high school students in Chase County, 8% of the total county enrollment. But there was a growing awareness across the nation that common school education was not enough for a changing world. Many military draftees in World War I were unable to read a newspaper or write a letter home. Several prominent educators of that period called the American people a nation of 6th graders. Some allege there were 25 million illiterates in America. To address the need for better education, Cottonwood Falls residents had voted in 1903 to organize Chase County High School. In accordance with a state law proposing broader educational offerings for common school graduates, it offered 3 distinct programs: a college preparatory program, a general course, and a normal program. Graduates of the college prep program were admitted to freshman classes at the University of Kansas or Kansas State without further examination. The general course was designed to provide training in business and commercial skills, and the normal program was to prepare future teachers for training in emporia. The Chase County Leader editorialized in 1903, "Every young man and young woman in Chase County should resolve not to stop school until he or she has graduated from the county high school at least. No young person is well suited for active life until he or she has more than a common school education. It's not enough in these times to simply be able to read and write." With growing awareness of the need for better educational offerings, county voters decided in 1914 to allow the organization of 6 rural high schools. Rural High School number 1, Saffordville in Toledo Township, and number 2 in Matfield Green both held classes in 1918. Elmdale number 3 began in 1919. Cedar Point number 4 in 1920, Strong City number 5 in 1925, and Clements, the last, and number 6 in 1928. Most of the rural high schools attempted to teach primary and secondary students in the same building. They had a limited tax base, few teachers, and few course offerings. Only the community high school in Cottonwood Falls offered the minimum 30 units of credit required by the state. Only it was sufficiently comprehensive to offer the varied program to meet educational needs and aspirations of all of its students. For a time, the presence of 7 high schools inspired vigorous intra-county rivalries in basketball, football, and track. Cedar Point cheered its Broncos, Chase County its Bulldogs, Clements its Eagles, Elmdale its Cougars, Matfield Green its Panthers, Saffordville its Bulldogs, and Strong City its Indians. By the early 1960s, these sports rivalries were coming to an end. Clements and Cedar Point had closed. The 4 remaining high schools faced the loss of their accreditation. They had limited foreign language offerings, vocational and fine arts offerings, and little guidance and counseling for graduates. But the rural high schools had served a great need and enabled many to improve their educations. For a time, Chase was the only county in Kansas to have 6 high schools with a total enrollment of about 250. These did not meet state standards. It was thought at that time that a single successful comprehensive high school must have a minimum of 300 students to have adequate course selection and an economical cost structure. Not surprisingly then, Chase County Planning Board recommended consolidation of these high school districts in 1963. But consolidation was not popular in some areas of the county, nor easy to effect. Steve Dawson recalls moving from one school to another.
As the schools closed down, I was the youngest, so as my brother and my oldest sister became of high school age, we would move. We wouldn't move, but we attended the Clement School, the Cedar Point School, and then when the high school closed at Cedar Point, I attended the Elmdale School, and then when I was the last one, I only attended Elmdale for 1 year, but then we ended up at Cottonwood. That was everyone. They fought. Some classes in these schools would be down for 8, at the end. And these were big schools with maybe 15 kids in the school.
School consolidation was not popular in some areas of Chase County or easy to effect. In 1960, county voters rejected a plan for school consolidation, but 4 years later they approved a single district, District 284. They also approved the unification of high schools in the mid-1960s. Still, significant opposition remained in Matfield Green and Strong City. At the local level, many residents were proud of their schools. They considered local schools crucial to the economic health of their towns. But professional educators believed that consolidation was essential to classroom excellence and affordability. Their point of view would eventually prevail, driven by the need to cut costs in an era of falling school enrollments. Financial pressures encouraged the Chase County School Board to close the old Cottonwood Falls Elementary School in 2010. This massive structure, which incidentally was added to the National Historic Register in June of 2021, had served the community for 106 years. Generations of county residents had learned to read, write, and calculate in its classrooms. Its closing was seemingly the last casualty of the protracted school reorganization process in Chase County. Those of you wishing to learn more about early Chase County schools or to examine yearbooks and memorabilia are invited to visit the Chase County Historical Museum in Cottonwood Falls.